Good evening. The special meeting of the Annapolis City Council for Monday, March 21st will be called to order at 7:05 p.m. At this time, would everyone willing and able please stand for the invocation given by Alderman Kirby, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. Heavenly Father, I ask that you bestow your blessings upon this body as we embark on the business of the city, which each of us was elected to do. I want to thank you in advance because it's you who will lead, guide, and direct as only you can. I further ask you let no man or woman depart this chamber with bitterness in their hearts. This I ask in your mighty, magnificent, powerful name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Pantelidis.
Present.
Alderman Bud.
Here.
Alderman Payon.
Present.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Present.
Alderman Littman. Alderman Kirby.
Present.
Alderman Pfeiffer. Alderman Arnett.
Present.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the first item on the agenda?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. The first item on the agenda is the approval of agenda.
At this time, I would entertain a motion.
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
I believe before we get to that, one of the aldermen had a request for the postponement of O-1016, the water service billing, until the special meeting of April 25th.
Yes, that's correct. The Environmental Matters Committee met on this ordinance, and we had received for that meeting a lot of new information from both Finance and Public Works, and we just felt the need to have more analysis of the data before we move forward with it. We're going to try to handle that expeditiously at the next committee meeting, and then presumably we'll move forward. So I would move that we remove that from the agenda.
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, it looks on the agenda as if we're postponing O-3615 also. That's the adequate facilities legislation.
Right.
Alderman Littman requested that until April the 25th.
Alderman Littman requested it until April the 25th.
Right. Okay, so because that's part of the consent agenda, we don't have to act on that?
No, you're going to just adopt it when you do the consent agenda.
Okay, adopt the postponement. Okay, thank you.
All in favor of adopting the agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is a ceremonial item beginning with ID-83-16, City Council citation to Tammy Hook, Boards and Commissions Recorder for 20 years of service to the City of Annapolis.
Ms. Hook, if you could join me at the center. We have a City Council citation I'm going to read to you. It's signed by myself and all the members on the council. On behalf of the citizens of the City of Annapolis, we are pleased to confer upon you this City Council citation in recognition of your extraordinary dedication and commitment to efficient government service, supporting the various boards and commissions of this great city. Since April of 1996, your service has been a recording secretary for the ever-expanding array of boards and commissions have been nothing short of exceptional. We commend you on your professionalism for the past 20 years, attending hearings, proceedings, and other events that require written transcript and accurate records. Your countless hours serving hundreds of boards and commission meetings are in keeping with the highest ideals of government service and community involvement. We honor you tonight for your years of service to the City of Annapolis, given under our hand in the Great Seal of the City of Annapolis on this 21st day of March, 2016. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor Moore. Thank you, Mayor Mayor Pam. I knew I was going to do that because I practiced it. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pandolinis and City Council members. I knew I was going to make that mistake because I was practicing too hard. But it has been a great pleasure to work with the city staff and the many members of the boards and commissions over the past 20 years. And I look forward to working with you guys many more. Thank you guys for making it a very pleasurable ride. Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is petitions, reports, and communications, beginning with reports by committees.
Is there any audit person that would like to present a report? Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you. The Public Safety Committee met on last Wednesday, March 16th. We had a pretty extensive meeting. I have my notes. We heard from Fire Chief Stokes, who shared with us his goals for 2016. We heard about the plans for a sprinkler committee that's being formed to talk about the need for sprinklers and how to make it happen, especially in the historic district. We heard about a proposed plan that maybe by now has been finalized to move one of our medic units down to Station 8, which is the Annapolis Next Station, and they in turn will be able to move one of their units down to South County. It seems that our medic unit responds, or their medic unit responds to almost 1,000 calls for service in the course of a given year coming out of that particular station. So the two fire chiefs got to put their heads together and decided that some shuffling needed to take place so that there would be greater efficiency and that our medic units would be responding to our calls more frequently. So that, if it has not been finalized, it is in the works as we speak. We heard from the deputy fire chief on the blizzard of 2016, looking at the specifics of the snowfall. For example, we got 29.2 inches. We had 320 calls for service to the call center. Those are non-emergency calls. We responded, and this is over the 24-hour period, 13 emergency management alerts, 29 conference calls, and the list goes on, which gave their department an opportunity to look at the strengths in the program as well as what weaknesses there were. And I'll be honest, there weren't many weaknesses at all. I mean, there's always room for improvement, but the fact that they're constantly analyzing is significant. Also talked about a continuity of government plan. Every government should have a plan in case something happens to the building where you do business. And so there's a plan in place so that if for some reason this building is not habitable by us, we have someplace else out of which to operate. So that plan is in the works and will be coming before the full council shortly also. The committee heard from the Human Relations Commission. They have a report that they have presented to us on, it's their recommendations on community policing. Came out of the town hall meeting by the Caucus of African American Leaders back in, I think, October. They were asked to also look at community policing and what we're doing and how we could improve our service. So they simply presented their report to us last week. At a future meeting, we will be sitting with them to really analyze what those recommendations mean and making some decisions about whether we will implement, what the cost implications are, what the timelines are, and the like. The last presentation at that meeting was the police chief's continued discussion on the Caucus of African American Leaders recommendations. They sent us the council 17 recommendations. And so we've created a grid with all the recommendations, and again with cost implications, timelines for implementing if we choose to implement, as well as recommendations. So we are trying to schedule, I'm not sure whether we have a date yet, but we're trying to schedule a work session so the full council will have an opportunity to get those recommendations, and then it's up to the council as to what recommendations we will implement and how we'll do that. On Friday evening, I had the pleasure of joining our police at their first annual gala. They had a fundraiser at the Lowe's Hotel. The benefit is their Explorers program, which is a program for young people to get acclimated into policing and hopefully will become police officers in their future. It was extremely well attended. The police chief recognized many of our officers who had been promoted and recognized for various accolades that they had received over the course of the year. I think, our next meeting is on April 18th at 5 p.m., but there will be a work session in the interim. Once we get the date, we'll notify everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderman Payan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Economic Matters Committee, met right after the Public Safety Committee. There were two items of business that we covered. One was the potential appointment of Robert Kalubi to the Building Board of Appeals. We unanimously voted to unanimously recommend approval. The other was 01116 Transportation Network Services, and after discussion, once again, we voted to unanimously recommend favorably on that ordinance also. We will also meet on April the 18th, however, it will be at 6:30 p.m. immediately following the Public Safety Committee hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Budge.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and the public. The Transportation Committee met on March 15th. We considered two pieces of legislation, and like the Economic Matters Committee on 01116, we endorsed that over to the council. On R516, which we'll be considering tonight, we also endorsed that favorably. And we also had a good and lengthy discussion with SP Plus and the Office of Law, exploring the ins and outs of the parking management contract and getting an understanding of how that's going to work going forward. Next meeting of the Transportation Committee is April 19th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Alderman Lippman.
Thank you, Mayor. The Environmental Matters Committee met on March 17th, and we had a full agenda. I'll update the council now. On legislation 01016, that's the water service billing adjustments, the committee has continued its diving into some of the numbers to try to better understand. Over the past, I think it was 3 years, there were 50, I'm doing this from memory so I might be slightly off, 57 adjustments totaling about $65,000. So we're not talking out of water billing fees of approximately $30 million. So we're not talking a huge percentage, but $65,000, we're still certainly expected to act responsibly. So we continued to have a healthy dialogue. I think we were moving towards a consensus of the committee's recommendations, but they'll be in the form of an amendment that has yet to be drafted. So we postponed this matter again to give the city attorney some time to draft an amendment and circulate for the committee's review. I would expect at our next meeting in April that we'll have that amendment prepared to pass on favorably for the full council. We also reviewed R516, that's Shiley Park, and we approved that matter unanimously. A few updates on some city programs. We heard from the Director General from Department of Public Works on the yard waste program. The city and the department is trying to encourage yard waste recycling using reusable containers. Essentially, they look like trash cans, and you can use trash cans marked with an X or paper bags trying to discourage people from using plastic bags. When you use plastic bags for your leaves and they get collected by the city has to spend money on essentially trying to take out the plastic bags and remove the plastic from the waste stream, which is of course expensive and not good for the equipment. We also got an update on recycling programs. Essentially, the solid waste diversion progress has been somewhat flat over the past year, but after many years of improvement, the goal is to get towards, again, doing this from memory, towards 50% or at 50%, and we're in the low 40s, around 40, 41, 42%. And that's amount of solid waste removed from trash and put into recycling. The city's trying to improve and increase the amount of commercial recycling. That's recycling done by commercial businesses, and similarly the multi-unit recycling. Lastly, we heard about compost recycling. Department of Public Works had tried or was in the process of building up a test pilot program where a certain part of the city would do compost recycling. That program has stalled, however, because there are no longer any facilities within reasonable driving distance to take that compost, so that program has been put on hold. The city, through various mechanisms with its contractor, the city has been able to get a lower solid waste refuse fee. And I believe that is the basis of why in this year's budget has a reduced solid waste fee. We're paying our contractor less for the same services. We also heard about updates on Forest Conservation Act projects. And again, will reiterate that there are a lot of projects in the pipeline that are now at the grading permit stage. So within a short amount of time, I expect that city is going to be having construction cranes and machinery throughout the city. So if you're curious about the scope of what I'm referring to, please go on to our agenda for March 17th, and you could click on FCA update. I did ask for future updates from DNEP to have some summary form so that it is easier to look at in collection. And then we briefly heard from the Annapolis Environmental Commission. And I think I hit the highlights. Any updates from my committee members? I got it? Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. The one thing I would add about the recycling bins and the compost one for yard waste, they are free, and any city resident can pick them up at Spa Road, and they have wheels on them. So instead of bending over, stuffing black bags full of leaves for hours on end, you can just pick one up and roll it to the curb. So we've had great success. Alderman Pan?
Mr. Mayor, I would point out that if we had leaf vacuuming in the streets, we wouldn't have to worry about the plastic bags that my colleague from Ward 5 has mentioned. Just an aside.
Good point. Alderman Arnett?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Several things. First of all, we're looking forward to the generous grant from the alderman from Ward 2nd to pay for the leaf vacuuming trucks, and we'll be all happy to participate in that. The Rules Committee has not met since the 1st of March. Our agenda has been light. The major item on it is the resolution to amend the employee rules and procedures. That is something that has gone back to the staff and will be worked on and may actually wait until we get the class and comp study. We'll have to see. But we expect a heavy workload coming because we'll be getting all of the amendments to the city organization. So once we've finished with the public hearings on that, we'll commence work on that. The chair of the Finance Committee is not here. We had our first meeting after receiving your budget last Wednesday, and it was primarily to give us the detailed pro formas that set forth the budget. We asked for several additional pieces of information. We're going to be meeting, at least for a while, every Wednesday. That will stop when Wednesday night racing starts, but for now, it'll be every Wednesday here in council chambers. 2 o'clock, Fred? 2 o'clock. So we'll be meeting early to give us time to go through all of the kinds of materials. I think we're going to be taking a higher level look at the budget this year. We don't want to bring in each of the department heads and go through their elaborate presentations. I think we're going to try to tackle some more philosophical and fundamental matters with the budget. So Alderman Payon and Pfeiffer and I will be firmly ensconced here every Wednesday at 2 to go over at 3. Oh, that's not the Boy Scout pledge, that's 3 o'clock. Okay. No, it's 3 because Bruce can't make 2. He has a doctor's appointment. So anyway, they're scintillating things, and we really encourage people to come down and enjoy the fun. And yeah, I know, but Bruce has asked that it be moved to 3 because he has a doctor's appointment. Okay, good. So you can roll out the information from finance. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Kirby?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Housing, Human Welfare, and Housing Community Development Committees both met on last week. And we did take up the appointment of Christopher Flynn and the appointment of Martin Dordan to the Housing Authority Board. As noted, it came back 2-1, 2 with 1 abstention. As abstention has been duly noted as myself. There were some lingering questions which came to light Wednesday morning right after that meeting to me. The questions are ones which are personal items, and I wouldn't want to do personnel items here in open chamber. It's for this reason that I stand ready to appoint Mr. Doolin tonight. However, I'm asking my colleagues to hold the appointment of Christopher B. Flynn until such time as I have a further conversation with him. I abstained, and my recollection is as long as I have been the chair, we've come in not with divided votes. We've come in either all against, all for. There was a reason why I abstained, and that some things came to light that I just, quite frankly, need another conversation with Mr. Flynn, and I would urge my colleagues, if you put this up for up and down vote tonight, to defeat it until I have that chance. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things, as mayor, the challenges we have is with the Housing Authority. And when I found Mr. Flynn and Mr. Dordan, the time it took to go through and find these 2 men that are going to make such positive change in the city was almost a year. And I said it and somebody thought I was joking, but I got turned down more for the Housing Authority Board than every other board and commission combined. And I had a meeting with the executive director, Melvin Corbett. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to read this so the public can hear at home. We had a meeting for about an hour and a half. We went through each of the partnerships the city and the Housing Authority can do to make life better for the residents within there. The first thing we talked about doing is we were going to work on a sprinkler program. As Alderwoman Finlayson mentioned, many of the units are out of date and don't have sprinklers. The city goes out once a month and we give free smoke detectors, not just to public housing, to any unit, wherever we go. We knock on their door. If they have a smoke detector that doesn't work, they get a free one with a 10-year battery. Just needs a new battery, we give them one. We also talked about forming a partnership with the community college. One of the things that the city's doing is inspecting all the units so everybody has a standard quality of life. Community college has great programs in electrical work and plumbing work to train people, but most of their work is not so much hands-on, it's sitting in a classroom learning. So what better way to learn about how to fix a unit than to walk into a unit where wires are dangling or a shower head won't stop running to actually do it. Low-cost way where you don't have to pay the people and they get hands-on experience. We talked about the digital divide, which is the gap between people that have internet and people that don't, and particularly how much it hurts the children growing up in schools, being able to research and everything else. I was at the National League of Cities, and they were talking about new and innovative ways to bring internet to people. And in the South, they actually have solar-powered planes, Google, that just flies around and shoots down internet. I talked to the head of government relations for Comcast, and they have a program. It's $9.99 a month, low to moderate income. People can get internet. So we're going to work with them to implement those programs within there. We also talked with Recreation and Parks about the Greenscape program. It's the 25th anniversary of Greenscape. We're thinking about doing a community cleanup day amongst other things within the community. The other point is a stormwater project. Alderman Littman, as you've alluded to before, sometimes the money doesn't necessarily go to projects. I talked with the county executive. That project's on the border between the city and the county and fixing the outfall. In addition to that, we also talked about public safety, how we're going to work on doing that, and giving more preference to local people and veterans. So if you're an Annapolis resident, if you're a veteran, getting higher up on the priority list. I think there's something about 50% of people on the waiting list are from other jurisdictions outside of Anne Arundel County. So with all this work that's got to be done, I feel that, a delay can't take place. And I think Mr. Dorden's experience running the healthcare system for Anne Arundel County, bringing health to the community, vital programs, is going to be absolutely fabulous for the community, for the residents, and for the city. So with all these things taking place, we need people on the board that can start moving right away.
Mr. Mayor, I might remind you that we do have another council meeting on 4/11. Mr. Dorden is not a problem at this time with me. Mr. Flynn is not a problem at this time with me. I respectfully ask that we hold the appointment until 4/11. I will have contacted him by then. I might also state that our local publication has tried to contact Mr. Flynn also. So there are questions that I need a further question with Mr. Flynn. And given, if you put him up tonight, I'll respectfully ask my colleagues to deny the appointment. I mean, it could all change. Simple conversation. I do not think that that's asking much. It's less than a month.
I respect your opinion, but after
Plus, it's been vacant 6 months.
It has been, which I think is all the more reason to do it now. And after watching the Housing and Human Welfare Committee report, I mean, I don't know what other questions you could possibly ask the man. I don't think any board member or potential board member has gone through a questioning like they went through, which is fine. I mean, you have to vet these people. It's an important board, but I guess we can move on to the next item. Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is comments by the general public.
First person, we only have one person, Ryan Lee Bizzuto. You can state your name and address for the record. Join us up front.
Hi, good evening. Ryan Lee with Bizzuto here. My address?
Could you hit the button, turn green?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Aldermen, Alderwomen. Ryan Lee with Bizzuto here. My address is 909 New Jersey Avenue, Southeast in Washington, D.C. I'm here tonight to read a statement in regards to the legislation adding school utilization to the APF. It's O3615. Bizzuto is no stranger to new development in the city of Annapolis or in Anne Arundel County in general. With respect to the school overcrowding, we certainly share in your concern for this. We do, however, believe that a deeper look into the causes and effects of new residential development in the city is in order. Of our 30 new homes that were delivered at Uptown and Maury Hill on West Street just a few years back, there was only one middle-aged school child out of that development. The condo that we are proposing just down the street from that and on West Street will actually be smaller units, mainly one-bedroom den type units. We believe that the city should look to the county as an example for how to handle this issue. By that I mean using the APF requirement in town centers that are in need of economic development, such as Parole and Odenton. Due to budgetary issues and revenue needs, we believe that the majority of the city falls within this category as well. So we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. And just to let you know, we've actually put that legislation on hold. There's a work group with the city, the county, the school board, so we're not addressing this until that work group's finished their work. So thanks for coming by. Anyone else like to come forward? Now's your chance. Seeing no motion, I declare petitions, reports, and communications closed. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is appointments, beginning with AP-09-16, the appointment of Robert Hruby to the Building Board of Appeals.
Is there a motion to accept the appointment of Robert Hruby to the Building Board of Appeals?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is AP-10-16, the appointment of Christopher B. Flynn to the HACA Board of Commissioners.
Is there a motion to accept the appointment of Christopher Flynn to the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis?
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion? Alderman Lippman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I met for the first time Mr. Flynn at the Housing Authority, at the Housing Committee meeting, and I was very impressed with his resume. I was very impressed with his responses to the questions, and as you mentioned, he did have many questions, and I think he answered them sincerely, demonstrating his intelligence and his vast capability to be a very good commissioner on this board. So I have no reservations at this time of why to vote against him in any way. But given that, I know I've asked my colleagues for time on certain matters, and I've asked for their patience. And so when a colleague of mine asks for one delay for one meeting so he can do something, I'm inclined to give him that chance. But I'm giving you the long version because I want to be clear that, like I said, I was extremely impressed with Mr. Flynn, and I see nothing at this point that I saw that would discourage me from voting in favor of him. So my interest in being courteous to Alderman Kirby is not a reflection on anything else other than just that.
Alderman Arnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleague from Ward 5, I find myself torn. I agree with you that it's time to get on with the business of the Housing Authority. And I'm loath to delay on that. On the other hand, we do have a colleague asking us to give him consideration. If it's the collective will of this body, then I think we need to hear what he's looking at, and I hope that's done with great deliberation.
Anyone else? Alderman Pan?
I would note that Alderman Kirby has always been, always extended professional courtesy to me in such matters. I can't lose, I certainly am mindful of that, but I just don't understand what could possibly hold up a vote tonight. He's had a hearing before at least one committee. He's had a rather detailed resume that he submitted. He was questioned from what I saw on my computer rather thoroughly at that meeting. He's been vetted. He has a responsible position with the state's attorney's office. He's a veteran. He's got a, I guess I don't understand why we should postpone. I think we need his help. We need his help now, and I'm reluctant to postpone the matter any further.
Anyone else have any comments? Alderwoman Finlayson?
More of a question. So what is the process now? There is some unreadiness amongst my colleagues. So, Mr. Attorney, can we move to postpone action on this at this point?
Not to make this more complex than it need be.
A simple yes or no would suffice.
The simple answer is if one intended to postpone it, that should have been raised before the agenda was established. However, as the meetings go on, certainly the council, in reaching its deliberative answer to things, can decide that it chooses at this point to not move forward. But I think the difficulty here is that and I don't know, I'll have to ask the mayor, but I would expect if Mr. Kirby had significant reservations, given that his committee voted this individual forward, if he has concerns, he should have brought them to the mayor with regard to his appointee. But
Mr. Attorney, that's not my question. Can we move to postpone action on this legislation right now, or on this appointment now?
I believe it should have been brought at the agenda stage, but the mayor has the discretion to decide at any time if he wants to go off the agenda. He controls it, so he can allow you to vote or not. I recommended to him that he move that forward, that as a courtesy, he allow you to ask this question. But I think procedurally, you do not have that right unless he wants to grant it.
I'm not sure that's how the Roberts Rules reads, Mr. Attorney, but would you please check that out for us and read back the language that gives the mayor that authority?
Alderman Pan.
Mr. Mayor, I would note that although I would like to go forward this evening, I think that the committee hearing that my colleague from Ward 6 referenced took place after the agenda was already established, so I don't think you could have asked for a postponement before the agenda was done anyway, is what I'm trying to say.
And just to the Alderwoman's point, generally, Robert's Rules control in the general normative meeting, but in special meetings, the mayor has absolute control of the agenda. That's in the code, so.
Mr. Mayor?
I think the city attorney answered the question. Alderman Kirby?
Yeah, again, my colleague here has sat beside me in the Housing and Human Welfare Committee meetings. I might note again that I did not vote yes or no. I abstained. I did that for a reason. I was privy to information the very next day that I thought I needed to ask a few more questions. It would be a shame to lose a qualified individual and candidate such as Mr. Flynn. But I just beg your indulgence until the meeting of 4/11. Short of that, again, I would ask my colleagues to vote this nomination down.
Well, we're going to run the risk of losing a qualified candidate on that. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Mr. Mayor, that seems to be your choice. The request is simply to postpone, not to vote the candidate down.
Sure.
And if I'm looking at our documents, which are on our desk, which are supposed to be our rules for procedures, we have every right to postpone action. Now, if we want to change the rules, but this is what we follow, and if that's not what we're following, we shouldn't have them on our desks.
He's going to look into it in the code, and I think he
Thank you.
mentioned that special meetings are different than regular meetings. But if it's your intent simply to keep the status quo and kick the can for another 2 weeks and just keep doing things the way we're doing it, we can certainly do that. I don't think that's productive. The list I've read through and the problems on Hackett properties that have been going on can't wait another 2 weeks. We need these two men, and we need them on there to take the city, take the housing authority forward. I have. It took me a very long time.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Kirby?
a motion to postpone.
Second.
I believe we're waiting on the attorney's interpretation. I don't want it. While we're waiting, does anybody have anything else for the good of the order? Alderman Littman?
Perhaps we should consider the appointment of Mr. Dordan in the meantime. You're doing it together?
I think to Jared's point, we could withdraw that, vote on Mr. Dort, and then come back to it.
Or perhaps just postpone both appointments and do consent calendar, then come back to the appointments? Just trying to make use of the time.
I'll look to the city clerk.
It's the agenda. The agenda.
The council will take a 5-minute recess.
Director, good to see you. Yeah, about enforcement on right, because the thing doesn't go into effect until sure, yeah. Or just mix it up so that some days this gets citizen, not the citizen. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is. I haven't tried it. I think it is. I got a question. I got something in the mail from CMS Services collection about a parking ticket that I got in 2011, which I apparently paid.
Where's Mark?
You're in there. $50 ticket. I paid.
He's everywhere. I love it.
Apparently, they must.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they said.
He is.
They didn't
He
say I
is.
paid it late, but they said it was $80, and I only paid $50. Now I know those things increase, and maybe I just paid the ticket and I didn't pay the penalty. What the hell do I do?
Council's back in session. Mr. City Attorney, would you like to give us an update on what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alderwoman Finlayson is right. The charter specifies that Robert's Rules control at all meetings, and the provision that I was referring to is in the charter, and it talks about the mayor calling special meetings and controlling them, but does not specify a different set of rules. So, in this particular case, as they have a process they've been using forever, the code itself specifies Robert's Rules. The Alderwoman is correct, and I apologize for my error.
Apology accepted. Thank you.
So there's been a motion and a second to postpone. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is AP-11-16, the appointment of Martin L. Chip Dordan to the HACA Board of Commissioners.
Is there a motion to adopt the appointment of Martin Chip Dordan?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent calendar. Items on the consent agenda include CA-2-16, O-15-16, O-16-16, R-14-16, and the postponement, which you've already discussed, about O-36-15.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is business and miscellaneous, beginning with GT-17-16, transfer from Truxton Park Swimming Pool, Fire Station Paving, Truxton Park Skate Park, Trail Connections, et cetera, and City Dock Infrastructure transfer to Maintenance Facilities and City Hall Restoration Public Works.
Is there a motion to approve GT 1716?
So moved.
Any discussion? Alderman Lippman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we just have a brief summary of this transfer? A brief summary of this transfer. I think it's a lot of money involved in some important works. I think we should hear about it.
Public Works will answer that question.
Good evening. I'm Marcia Patrick, Assistant Director of Public Works. The transfer in question is to increase the appropriation to both our maintenance facility project and City Hall. The maintenance facility project was delayed for a few years while alternatives were considered, and construction costs have escalated in that time, and an additional $500,000 was required to allow for the full scope of the project. The other project that there is a request to increase funding is for City Hall, and this project's been going on for several years, and there are several phases, and bids have been taken to replace the air conditioning system in this building, and we are preparing to install an electrical generator. So we are requesting an additional $600,000 for those two items.
Alderman, or Director Miller?
And the funds are coming from closed capital programs, which so therefore the funding is not needed in these areas from Truxton Park swimming pool down. Those accounts are closed, so the funding is being transferred to the two projects that we just mentioned.
Alderman Arnett?
I was going to make that same statement, but I would point out that, as you will see also in the next transfer, Public Works Department was able to come in under budget by $1.4 million on the city bulkheading, and so there's the $400,000 in this GT, and there's $1 million in the next GT to repurpose those funds because we brought it in under budget and on time. They did.
Any other discussion? Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, I was going to say much of what the Alderman from Ward 8 said, but to recognize the department, because you came in under budget on the city dock infrastructure. And then the other big number is the $470,000 from the general bonds for the sale of the bonds, the savings. Is that correct, Mr. Miller? That's where that comes from?
That was a premium associated with the sale of the bonds,
Mhm.
correct.
And so all of the other projects too came in under budget, and so the department should be commended for that. Thank you.
On the other hand, City Hall restoration is over budget, so this is the last dollop of money to finally get the heating and the air conditioning. I think this is all for HVAC, for the air conditioning. So we needed those savings.
Alderman Budge.
I would also like to add, since I was asked via social media, why can't we reuse the air conditioners that we pulled out of the Market House? Those air conditioners have, those surplus air conditioners have long since been sold as surplus. They're not in storage anywhere, and they're not applicable to this project in any way.
Alderman Pan?
I would point out that thankfully, this doesn't involve any extra money to be paid on this boondoggle, because that's what it, a lot of it turned out to be. I mean, come on, we're paying for the easy part now, the part that was necessary now. This doesn't, you know, we've already paid for the 5.5 months rent where the Donner building, the law office down there stood empty while the law office functioned here for 5.5 months. This is from a previous administration, not yours. I mean, there were so many things that were done that didn't need to be done. You know, now we have to pay for the part that really did need to be done. Look, there's no extra money. It's just a matter of transferring this. I don't like it, but I, for one, will hold my nose, grit my teeth, stomp my feet, and vote for it, because we do need to pay our bills.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is GT 18-16, transfer from 2015 improvements and city dock infrastructure transfer to general roadways public works.
Is there a motion to approve the budget transfer?
Second.
Any discussion? Alderman Lippman?
Again, if we could hear from Public Works, there's a lot of money involved.
This funding is actually not an increase in appropriation. It is simply bond premiums are being moved from one account to another.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, Ms. Patrick, so that means we had $2 million in the budget for roadways anyway, but this is just the funding of that $2 million in the road.
Correct. This is not a new $2 million.
Thank you.
Director Miller?
Thank you. And to further emphasize, we will not need to go out to borrow or include this in the borrowing in the future year. So we'll be saving that debt service on the $2 million.
Mr. Miller, while you're on, can you just explain why we had that money left over from the bonds?
Bond premium. It was all part, when we sold the 2015 bond series, we received, the value of the bonds exceeded, so we got a premium.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand it. I think what you're saying is, just to make sure I understand it, we expected to get a certain amount for the bonds, and for the value, we got more than we expected. Okay. So we had a budget, but we got more than we expected. Right. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing continued from March 14th, 2016, beginning with Charter Amendment CA-1-16, Departmental Reorganization.
We have one person signed up to speak, and that's Paul Thorne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to remark about the proposed regular organization of the city departments, especially the Management Information Technology, otherwise known as MIT. As mentioned in the proposed agency consolidation report, the related public-private partnerships that are to be exposed, and I'm here to extend my conditional support for the proposed reorganization and public-private partnerships. MIT has been a major mission in my professional life. Now, as a concerned citizen, I want to see its continuing success. I have a list of here that are credentials. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I have given you a report on that. But I do want you to know I've been with the city IT for the past 30 years in various different capacities, and eventually rose up to the MIT manager. I retired as the MIT manager in June 2014, and I also returned on a limited part-time basis as an IT consultant in November of 2014 for approximately 8 months. I'll give you a little background on MIT. It's always been a division of finance since I started working full-time with the city in 1983. But MIT has always functioned and appeared as being an independent department because of the nature of MIT providing unique services to the frontline departments. And over the past 30 years, MIT has picked up as technology and infrastructure and digital services has increased over the years, picked up many additional functions and services that's listed in the background paragraph. But especially the last thing, major project we did with the ERP system of Munis that provides financial and business features and functions. Specifically on the reorganization, during the recent and previous city administration, there was a plan to elevate the MIT to a full department status and to have a chief information officer, otherwise known as the CIO. However, I endorsed the plan to reorganize and move MIT from finance to the city manager, or even better, under a new central administration services department, or even as a separate MIT department. I do understand the need to reduce the span of control at the top level is very desirable. There's also a concern that over the past years, MIT has lost its voice and presence at the department head table. Hopefully with the reorganization, MIT will be directly involved in the business of doing city business, connecting all departments with integrated technology and providing services internally and to the public. I also hope there are plans to fill the MIT manager position that I vacated 21 months ago. On the issue of public-private partnership, I could be wrong on this, but also related. In the reorganizational staff report, I believe we're talking about outsourcing, but I hear that many sources. MIT functions and services at the private-public level. The city does need to reduce costs at every opportunity, especially immediate and post-employment human capital expenditure. Is outsourcing MIT the answer to reducing costs? Many IT functions and services are already outsourced and managed at a high level. We contract out for computer and server repair. PC software and security is essentially managed. Remote PC and application support is in use. Email and basic Office suite software and support and some data storage services are now provided by Google, albeit at a higher dollar cost. What could you lose? Have you ever called and waited for mostly not helpful support from your home computer? When you call MIT, you get a human to answer the phone. Hello, this is MIT. How can I help you? What is your level of service expectation, and what metrics will you use to measure those expectations to make sure those expectations are met? Can the county provide IT support at the same or lower cost? Maybe. But at some level, the response to city requests will always be second priority and probably cost more dollars, if not in level of service. Your outsourcing costs are also no longer under your control. When the contractor and vendor says your rates are going to go up 8% a year, and your city revenues only go up 2% a year, you're in a dilemma. It's not easy and trivial to swap out IT services, and like trash collection is unlike trash collection, is highly complex and involved function. Also, my recommendation on this line, on the line of reorganization, is an IT strategic plan, which was last completed in 2009, and previously every 5 years. MIT has done a citywide technology strategic plan with an independent and outside agency. The first step is an assessment of citywide and department level IT functions and services, as well as an analysis of MIT's IT resources, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, otherwise known as SWOT. This process always carefully considers outsourcing and related current and future costs and benefits. Hopefully, with or without reorganization, a new strategic plan with strategy, project, timetable, budget can be prepared for the next 5 years before outsourcing is implemented. In summary, I do support the placement of MIT with a city manager or a new central administration department or a separate MIT department. I recommend filling the MIT manager position. On public-private partnerships, maybe, but only after careful long-term planning and consideration of the level of services. Do a 5-year IT strategic plan first to determine what IT services and functions to consider in outsourcing. Thank you.
Thank you for the detailed report. Thank you for your years of service to the city. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thorne, for sharing your thoughts with us. You are truly the consummate professional when it comes to MIT, so we've always relied very heavily on you for your expertise, so thank you. I do have a few questions. Can you outline what your responsibilities were with the city when you were the MIT director, manager, head of the department?
Just like any head of any department, serves as the person in the driver's seat of the department, make sure that the department has a vision, is going in the correct direction at the correct speed, and not overtaxing itself. But I also provided services to support at the application level, for example, the Munis ERP system. I don't know how detailed you want me to get into.
Well, I guess my question, I'm leading up to the fact that when you left, you were not replaced. And I think there is a misperception that as a director, directors don't have hands-on work to do. You just supervise everybody and make sure everybody's doing their work, but you don't have a vital role. And I contend that every department head has a vital role.
Yes, well, I do get into the trenches. Sometimes an unusual situation, I do get into the trenches. I do get into application support, especially for Munis. That's one of the few things when I came back as an independent consultant for 8 months. I worked on some particular projects with the Munis system, particularly in the areas of getting, for example, the automatic debit system for utility billing. At this present time, it's probably not well known, is that you can make arrangement to have your bank account automatically debited for utility bill on the time the bill is date. Well, it's also dealing mainly with Wells Fargo, working with them with the banking services and integrating them into the Munis system for automating accounts payable withdrawals for vendors, so we wouldn't have to produce so many paper accounts payable checks. I don't have a list in front of me. I'm not prepared with that, but yes, I was very much involved.
I kind of get the idea. My concern being that you were not replaced, and there is someone who not only had a job prior to your departure, but now has your job on top of her existing job, which is a grave concern to me. You mentioned outsourcing, and I think we have a clearer picture of all the things that are outsourced. I know that we get emails frequently saying Munis is going to be down between midnight and 6 a.m., and we trust that somebody is doing that work during those hours so that when folks come to work at 8:30 in the morning, everything's up and running. How does one interface with an outsourced company?
Well, for example, the Munis update, we're automating that. Well, I understand that they're automating it. It was in the process of being automated as much as possible, so we didn't have any kind of human interaction with that. But, for example, if someone had to be there from the MIT staff, then that person would have some off time to compensate for that. But for outsourcing purposes,
is it as personal? Is it as hands-on? Is it as efficient as having our own staff?
Particularly, that's why I think that you need to do a little detailed analysis to find out exactly what you can and what you can't outsource.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I consider staff being as minimal as possible right now.
You were here when we had Essential Services. Were you part of Essential Services?
Negative. I've always, as I indicated, I've always been under the finance department.
Okay, because one of your recommendations is that MIT could go to Essential Services, which we no longer have. But that sounds like it was a good fit back in the day. The strategic plan, and I trust we have a strategic plan that was considered when we came up with these recommendations, Mr. Mayor?
Look to the city manager.
Is that a gun to your head? Okay. Well, I have to ask that question later. Well, I'm sorry, I just had to pick your brain because you're here for us, so thank you for your recommendations and your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to testify? Now's your opportunity. Seeing no motion, I declare the public hearing open. Sure. We all, in my special office, received a copy from former Mayor Ellen Moyer about the reorganization. I would like her letter to be officially accepted as part of the documentation. All right. Public hearing shall remain open until... Oh, the public hearing, that's right, is closed on this one. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on Ordinance O-13-16, Annual Operating Budget, Fiscal Year 2017.
There's nobody signed up to speak. If you'd like to address the council, now is your opportunity. Seeing no motion, I declare the public hearing open until May 9th, 2016. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Resolution R-09-16, Public Safety Employee Funeral Representation.
If you would like to address the council, now's your chance. Seeing no motion, I declare the public hearing on R-09-16 closed. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present our next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Resolution R-10-16, Position Classifications and Pay Plan.
No one had signed up in advance to speak. Please come forward. Seeing no motion, I declare the public hearing on this open until May 9th, 2016. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Resolution R-12-16, FY 2017 fee schedule effective July 1st, 2016.
Nobody had signed up in advance to speak. If you'd like to come forward, now's your opportunity. Seeing no motion, I declare the public hearing open until May 9th, 2016. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Resolution R-13-16, FY 2017 fine schedule effective July 1st, 2016.
If anybody would like to speak, now's your chance. I declare the public hearing on R-13-16 open until May 9th, 2016. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is legislative actions on second reader, beginning with Ordinance O-09-16, removing members of boards and commissions.
Is there a motion to adopt O-9-16 on second reader?
Mr. Mayor, during the recess, a couple of my colleagues approached me. As you know, and we received on Sunday night an email with a long analysis of this bill from an attorney here in town. And a couple of my colleagues would like to take time to assess this write-up before we dive into the deliberations on this bill. So either with your indulgence or however we want to work it, I would propose that I would move that we postpone this bill to the council meeting on April 11th.
Very much support that. I read Mr. Waldman's comments and there was a lot to digest. So second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Legislation is postponed. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Resolution R-05-16, Shiley Park.
Is there a motion to adopt R-05-16 on second reader?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Madam City Clerk, would you please?
We have an amendment.
Did not see that. For R5?
Yeah.
I'll let the sponsor speak to the amendment then.
Mr. Mayor, I'll speak. This is really Transportation Committee's amendment. Alderman Pfeiffer is the one raised it and discussed it in Environmental Matters. The Environmental Matters Committee didn't specifically adopt it, but he spoke to it, and I could represent it. Apparently, well, obviously, this property borders naval property, and they were concerned about not having permanent structures on that space so that if in an emergency they can get access through that property. And so that's the genesis of the amendment. So like I said, I'm not purporting it to be Environmental Matters Committee's amendment, but we spoke favorably of it for the logic that it presents.
Thank you. Alderman Pan.
Mr. Mayor, nobody intends to build anything on that property, I can assure you. But for that reason, I don't mind supporting that amendment.
All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panelidis?
Aye.
Are we voting on the amendment or on the
We already
motion?
voted on the amendment. We're voting on the
So we're
entire
voting
one.
on the motion as
Yes.
amended?
Yes.
Thank you.
And-
Aye.
Okay. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Lippman?
Aye.
Alderman Kirby?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderman Bud?
Aye.
Alderman
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Resolution R-31-15, rental unit licenses.
Is there a motion to postpone until a date certain or withdraw R-31-15 on second reader?
So moved.
What is that?
To postpone.
All right. All those in favor of postponement?
We have discussion?
Oh, please.
The only point I would like to raise is if, in fact, there are some flaws with this from a legal perspective, why do we want to postpone it?
I would ask the sponsor that question.
I'm not sure what you mean by flaws from the legal.
Constitutional problems.
Well, that has been suggested, but not totally confirmed.
How will we go about doing that?
Well, I think I'm in the process of doing that.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the postponement, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present our next item?
Have you set a date, Mr. Mayor, for the postponement?
Apologize for that. Alderman Finlayson, courtesy to the sponsor.
Yes, let's make it the second meeting in April, please.
Any objection to the second meeting in April? Perfect. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the agenda has been completed.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, this went a lot more quickly than I thought it would. Congratulations, and I would move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Without further ado.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Adjourn.